The New Triumvirate by Conway Fitzgerald. Chapter 9.
But how is it? By knowing these spoken words and having these components handy, you can create something so powerful from nothing?
Sherman asked.
It is certainly not from nothing,
The gnome master wizard responded firmly.
it is from everything that is.
Khajiits answered.
All things. All this magic potential. It surrounds us always. By enchanting the spell and knowing the expected outcome, you are simply introducing the pull of the magic to the place you are.
The gnome could see the young human learner was quite confused.
But if it is everywhere, then why must I?
Sherman began another question when Khajiits stopped him.
Make a fist.
Khajiits demanded of him as he stepped closer. Sherman started motioning with his hands and trying to imagine creating a magic fist.
No, with your hand. Make a fist.
He said. Sherman smiled and then obliged him, clutching his left fingers together.
Good. Now are you certain you have made a fist with your hand?
The gnome asked him.
Yes, I have.
Sherman answered, still quite vexed where the gnome was going.
Now, if you were to strike me with that fist, punch me here, square on the chin, I'll bet you suppose I'd be knocked out, eh?
Khajiits taunted.
I'm not terribly strong, but yes, I don't suppose it would feel good.
Sherman smiled back.
I think if you were to punch me on the chin, you would hurt yourself.
Khajiits said with certainty.
Look, I believe you. I don't want to fight.
Sherman said meekly.
On the count of 3, I want you to punch me right on the chin. You ready?
The little gnome asked.
Mr. Khajiits, I really couldn't.
1,
The gnome moved his fingers while he spoke.
2,
Sherman glanced back to Marcek, who motioned for him to go through with the experiment and punched the little gnome as he asked.
3.
The gnome shouted. Sherman turned and then jabbed his fist at Khajiits' little face. Yet before his fist impacted on the little gnome's bearded chin, it struck an invisible magic shield, which gave Sherman the feeling of striking an iron gate.
Oh!
Sherman yelled out as his fist impacted the magic shield. The gnome taunted him with a laugh.
Now ask your fist. Was there anything there? You certainly didn't see it, but you felt it, eh?
The gnomish wizard laughed again.
Oh, yes. I think my hand might be broken.
Sherman complained.
Feel the pain. No, it is real. I simply welcomed that shield to that space to prevent you from hurting me. Understand?
The gnome asked. Sherman nodded. Khajiits handed him a small vial containing some healing ointment.
Place some of this on your hand. It will make it better.
The gnome instructed.
Elements exist all around us. It is we, the magic users, that conjure it to the place we are. We harness magic. We do not create it. We do not make the wind. We raise the sails. Understand?
Sherman nodded back as he rubbed the magic ointment on his throbbing hand. The warmth and pain relief of the ointment was nearly instantaneous. Even the small amount he used had all but healed the injury he had just sustained.
Yes. I think I understand.
Sherman smiled. Just then the front door of their office was burst open. It was Brunarian, the elvish ranger, who had volunteered himself to become the boy's guardian. They all stood up.
Something is afoot. There are soldiers gathering within and outside of the city. Something is happening at the South Tower. Our informants claim the governor's men are gathering outside its main gate. Do they aim to take her?
Lassiter asked anxiously.
It appears so. They are not waiting for Balkus. They are demanding entry into the tower. We've got to stop them. If they take her, they will kill her,
demanded Marcek. Their small gathered army that resided in the lot outside of their office had also come under alert. A few of Lewin's many friends had been allowed into the castle earlier that evening, before the order was given to secure all city passages. One of them informed Lewin that word had spread that he was keen to a fight brewing in Vosse. All of Lewin's many friends, their compatriots, and even some of his inter-village rivals were eager to join in the fight. Lewin could not be allowed to get all the glory of this battle for himself.
They all want a piece.
Turgon smiled. He was a thin but wily rider and a rugged fighter. He was used primarily as a messenger, as no one could ride as fast or for as long as he could. That is why he arrived first.
Who is coming?
Lewin asked, surprised but happy.
Who isn't, is the question.
Turgon laughed.
Basil of Ronset, Herman Dance, Preliar. More than I can mention. They all heard you are party now to the new order. And a fight with Myst for control of the Vosse citadel was imminent. It was rumored that Owen IV himself was on the way here, with his own cavalry. How could we miss it?
Turgon's smile was electric.
Have them rally with us at the South Tower. I am leading a charge there now,
Lewin told him.
They have closed the castle gates.
Another new arrival informed them as he approached.
Many others have arrived, Sir Lewin, by the west gate. But all the gates of the outer walls have now been sealed. It may take days for us to construct proper rams and ladders,
the second rider said.
I'll see to opening the western gatehouse,
said Khajiits.
Good,
said Lassiter.
I will go with the human boys to the South Tower, where Aermine is held. We can't let them take her.
Yet before they could fully assemble their small cavalry and leave their shabby vacant lot, Sloane's men were already closing in, preparing their assault. Sloane had been forced to make a calculated gamble. If the two, those deadly gray assassins, were indeed inside Vosse and ordered to avenge the death of the Red, then he was already a dead man. Yet if Brunarion was bluffing, and Pathorum Zet had not committed them to my defense, then taking the boy's law office down now, before the courts could intervene, was the only way to preserve his place with Myst in Vosse. Sloane's hulking right-hand man Paru had gathered the best killers he could find. Some were merely hired blades. Others were skilled woodsmen and trained killers. Some were just zealous servants of the Darkstone. Sloane coordinated them all together with some intrepid gang members, particularly those of the Beaver Teeth and the Shallow Ditch gangs, who were eager for some payback. Sloane's cadre then outnumbered the boys more than 5-1. Though Sloane was well aware, where there are elves, there is magic. Yet he remained confident that a sudden, violent attack might shock the boys' camp into a quick, decisive submission. After which, he would have his answer, whether Trumaine and Ballandir, also known as the Two, had been deployed in Vosse as Brunerian had threatened. The rugged scout Turgon was dispatched towards the South Tower to obtain a preliminary reconnaissance. He raced alone through the narrow cobbled streets of Vosse until he reached an impasse. A large gathering of armed thugs with ropes and torches blocked the intersection. Turgon reversed the direction of his horse deftly and headed back to the office. The cadre of cutthroats pursued him, firing arrows and crossbow bolts as Turgon galloped away. Turgon raced back to the office, where the nascent new order was forming. He yipped like a fox as he rode at full speed down Irwin Lane, warning his compatriots that an attack was coming.
A mob approaches,
He told Lewin anxiously.
It's Sloane's thugs,
Said Brunerian from experience.
Those horses might be a disadvantage.
He warned.
These are honorless thieves. They'll target your steeds.
Brunerian knew how important each horse was to their riders. If slain, none of them could easily afford another.
We must form a defensive circle here. Fight them hand to hand.
He instructed. Lewin agreed.
Bring the horses to the other side of that fence. We must take to melee weapons.
He ordered. Khajiits then hid the horses from sight, using invisibility magic. Lassiter created a wall of force to the eastern side of Irwin Lane to prevent a two-sided assault. As the gang members approached the vacant lot from the west, Lassiter wove a phantasmic wall of foggy thornbrush. The dense, tangled vines confused the lesser hoods, yet Sloane and Paru passed right through it, their dark stone amulets showing them the way through the illusion. Likewise, it didn't take long for the more adept killers to traverse the roofs of nearby houses and breach the walls into the compound. Lassiter then retreated to keep an eye on Sherman and Marcek, who were still in the office.
Come, Brunerian. Time to pay for your misdeeds.
Sloane said coldly, unsheathing his long sword.
Myst's dark stone path leads nowhere. You are a Regian ranger. Why can't you see this?
Brunerian drew his own long sword, and the two rangers squared off for battle. Lewin's men detected the covert invasion of their perimeter by some of the shallow ditch cutthroats and had already engaged with them. Lewin then confronted the mighty Paru.
Stay back, big man. You have been warned.
The noble warrior said, drawing his own sword at him. Paru smiled at him and then charged excitedly. His grappling attack was most unexpected. The steel-reinforced bracers around his forearms blocked Lewin's defensive sword parry. Paru then grabbed Lewin by the neck with his powerful grip, lifting him off the ground. Lewin was a talented fighter with excellent instincts. Rather than attempt to free himself from Paru's grip, he locked his legs around Paru's arms, using them to pull him closer to his body. Then he jabbed his sword into the huge man's exposed abdomen. Paru then threw Lewin to the ground as he clutched for the wound. Paru growled, and then he smiled and charged after Lewin again. Sloane felt confident that killing Brunerian would end this struggle, so he focused on that. He was much stronger than the elf, using this to his advantage as he pressed down with his sword parry. After exchanging a few shots, Sloane caught Brunerian with a slicing hit beneath his leg, felling him to one knee. Sloane then kicked him forcefully in the chest, dropping him onto his back. But Sloane's focus was then broken as he beheld a ghostly image pass by him to his left. He turned to see Paru beating down on the young rider Lewin. The ghostly image glimmering past him was Tremaine. The two used time-shifting magic to move in ways that defied the normal passage of time. In what should have been a mere moment, Tremaine had whisked around Paru and then slit his throat before he knew he was even there. Sloane reacted instinctively, as having the ability to witness the Grey Elf assassin's movements at all might only be momentary. Sloane charged Tremaine, hoping he might land a lucky shot, while Paru grasped his bleeding throat and fell to the ground. But just as mighty Paru had been subdued, Balandir used the same magic, blocking Sloane's blow and then stabbing him deep in the liver with his long dagger. Sloane caught a glimpse of the Grey Elf's stoic face as he lumbered helplessly to the ground. The two then vanished as quickly as they appeared. Khajiits flew to the western gate, where about 100 armored riders and other supporters awaited entry to the city. They were yelling and trading insults with the castle guard. Khajiits then created a magic phantasm of a fire-breathing dragon circling just above the gatehouse. The men inside the gatehouse ran for their lives in terror as the gatehouse filled with the perceived fire of the red dragon. Those unfortunate enough to be caught in the gatehouse were burned alive, believing in the reality of the gnome's magic. The dragon flew away as Khajiits then approached the gate on foot. He examined it briefly and then used a more advanced form of knock magic to have it opened.
Look, men! It is true! What we were told! The users of magic have returned to Vosse!
Yelled one inspired rider. He rode through the opened gate and then asked the gnome,
You there, dwarvish wizard? Which way to the law office on Dusset Street?
I am not a dwarf,
the angry gnome retorted as several other riders made their way into the city. It was then Fay Harslet appeared before them. Follow me. I will lead you there, she signed. She then flew towards the boy's office within an orb of bright light. The armored riders followed after her.
What's going on out there?
Sherman asked Marcek, looking past the overgrowth that covered the broken window space in the kitchen. Marcek looked over his shoulder, pulling some branches to the side to get a better look.
My goodness! It's a war in our backyard,
Marcek said. Just then the boys were thrust back by the invading kick of one of the shallow ditch's best killers. Before they could get back on their feet, the boys witnessed the assassin draw 2 daggers and snicker at them. Yet before the killer could make his next move, his chest exploded with the impact of several magic missiles. The killer collapsed lifelessly onto the floor before them, and Lassiter flew through the window right after. The front door to their office was then burst open, and 3 other members of the kill team entered. Lassiter then delivered another mighty volley of magic missiles, dropping them all.
We need to go,
said Lassiter.
We can't abandon our friends here,
said Marcek.
We must aid them in this fight,
he said, with misguided courage and sincere dedication to his followers. Marcek then left through the rear door of the office and witnessed the aftermath of the battle, which had now mostly concluded. Lassiter and Sherman followed behind him. They found Lewin was alive, though he had taken a significant beating from Paru. His men were helping him to his feet. Brunarian was okay, having used his own healing potion to recover from Sloane's blow to his leg. Then Marcek noticed Sloane, who was still alive, dragging his body away from the lot towards Aermine Street, with a trail of blood behind him. When Marcek reached just behind him, the ranger captain could drag himself no longer. He grunted and then flipped over onto his back, heaving and spitting up blood. As Marcek got closer, he noticed the dark stone amulet had begun to hum. Sloane looked at Marcek and then to the amulet. With his last bit of strength, Sloane ripped the amulet from his neck and then threw it to the side. He then leaned back to take his last breath.
He was a good man, once,
said Brunarian, lamenting his friend's descent into the cult of the Darkstone and fealty to Myst. Marcek then approached closer to Sloane. Brunarian tried to prevent this, as even near death, Sloane could be very dangerous. But Marcek assured him and the others. He knelt before the dying Ranger Lord. He saw where Balandir's blade had pierced his side. Marcek placed his hand on the wound.
"Oh, Father, help me spare this man's life. He was led astray by darkness. It is a powerful evil we face. If we are to overcome it, we will need capable men, like Captain Sloane, to do it."
He prayed. Sloane had lost consciousness, and his mind retreated to the realm of the spirits. Like a rushing river, all of the dead flowed past the passage to the forked, rocky corridors of the afterlife. Above the river, the gods watched in silent judgment over all who passed. Sloane's spirit drifted towards the falling fork, where the spirits descended into a forever darkness, where no light prevailed. The ranger realized he deserved this judgment for betraying the trust of his city, foregoing justice for the pursuit of personal power. The brief moments of pleasure and short days of hubris now ensured his fate for an infinity within the dark, silent, lifeless abyss. Just before his final pass into that dark, craggy pit, he witnessed a single hand reaching out to him. It grasped him by his side. His shivering body felt a miraculous warmth come over him. The spiritual hand grasped his body and pulled him from the stream of the dead. The gods allowed this intervention. Sloane then awakened to see Marcek above him.
"You're going to be all right. Come, be with us now. The time of the dark stone is over,"
the young priest proclaimed. Brunarian was moved spiritually in ways he never thought possible.
"I'll look after him."
He smiled at Marcek.
"You must go to Aermine. Her faith must be rekindled. Tell her we are all with her,"
he said. Marcek turned to Sherman, who was flabbergasted by what he had just witnessed.
"But how? How do we get to her?"
asked Sherman, looking to the direction of the South Tower.
"That tower is beset with Myst's armored guards. We don't have the men to take it,"
he said as the rest of the horsemen reached their vacant property behind the lead of Fay Herslet. Lewin's men cheered as their comrades joined the ranks. Khajiits then dispelled the invisibility magic that had hidden the horses behind the fence. The joined battalion of horsemen were now galvanized for victory.
"On to the South Tower! We will demand justice!"
Lewin decried. His impassioned men and their 24 horses followed behind him.
"Even with these added horsemen, any battle engaged would be unlikely to lead us to her prison. At best, not swiftly enough." She is in danger. We must get there immediately,
said Lassiter.
I'll take you two there. You have right to be with her. You are her appointed legal defenders.
The Grey Elf wizard professed. He then enchanted a diminution magic on Sherman and Marcek, much as I had done to them before, to make them much smaller and easier to carry by way of magic flight. Khajiits attempted to dissuade this idea, but Lassiter took off swiftly before his trusted friend could attempt to change his mind. Lassiter ascended through the air towards the South Tower. As he got closer, his magic flight was diminished and he lost altitude. Only when he flew away from the tower did his powers return enough to prevent him from crashing into the shanty village below. He landed on the street in view of the South Tower, determined to try again. He reached and plucked Sherman from his pocket.
Which barred window is it? Which one is her cell?
The Grey Elf Master Wizard demanded. The shrunken Sherman could still see as he was lifted up to the sky like a child's rag doll in the direction of the South Tower.
The one there, that faces east. Yes, I believe that is it,
Sherman said, pointing his tiny hand in an even higher pitched voice. Lassiter then placed him back in his pocket. With great concentration, he flew back away from the South Tower. He then picked up speed, circling as he regained his altitude, until he finally concentrated his power directly towards the barred window of my cell. There was so much darkstone in and around my cell. The closer he got, the more difficult it was to proceed towards the barred window. Lassiter groaned as his speed decreased and his altitude fell. Then suddenly, a griffin appeared behind him. It snatched him with its great talons. It was Khajiits, who had polymorphed magically into the great winged beast.
The anti-magic shell is impenetrable by one spellcaster,
he said intuitively.
We must combine our powers.
The griffin that was Khajiits then repeated Lassiter's tact, flying with him away from the tower, gaining speed and altitude, and trying in one determined descent to reach my barred window. As the descent increased and they reached maximum acceleration, they ran into the anti-magic shell around the tower. Both wizards persisted in unison to breach the wall with the greatest extent of their magic abilities. As they closed in on the window, Khajiits was transformed back into his gnome form and then fell towards the ground. Lassiter persisted into an unseen field of great restrictive power. He closed in on the metal bars, extending his hand, growling in pain, staving off the anti-magic shield. He then thrust the boys forward with his hand, and with his last gasp of magical strength, flung them both through the barred windows. The boys returned to their normal size immediately after they passed through the metal bars, rolling together on the floor as they had before, like a pair of rolled dice. I had just concluded peeing in my exposed chamber pot when the boys rolled in before me.
There has got to be an easier way to do that,
Sherman joked. The jail guard then awoke from his catnap to see the boys suddenly there on the other side of the iron cell.
You there? What are you? How?
The guard cried out as he stood up and reached desperately for his chain of keys. But just as he began to protest the boys' presence in my cell, the door to the cell chamber was thrust open as a number of angry armed guards argued and wrestled with each other through the door.
Bar that door,
demanded the lead armored sergeant.
They are not taking the prisoner,
he commanded.
It is by command of the governor that she be moved back to his custody.
Another debated.
That is an unlawful request. We have received no orders from the judge in this regard.
The armored sergeant protested again.
Nor shall you.
Said Myst as he entered the jail chamber.
It is an executive order, and I am making it. I will explain the rest to Judge Balkus tomorrow.
By this time I had finished cleaning myself and stepped closer to my jail cell's locked gate. Myst's eyes gravitated to me. Then he saw Sherman and Marcek behind me.
You see? Look now. You all see it. Those two clever boys are here, scheming to break her out. We've arrived. Just in time, it seems.
Melek, why are those lawyers in the cell with her? When did they arrive?
The armored sergeant demanded of his jailer. If Melek answered that he didn't know they were in there with me, his career would certainly be over. So Melek lied to cover himself.
They arrived earlier this afternoon. They are her lawyers. They are permitted.
He stammered.
We have due right to counsel our client, and we are not leaving until we are certain her place here is secure,
declared Sherman. Just then, there was a further ruckus in the hall beyond. Many more of the court's armored sergeants reinforced their position in the chamber opposite Myst's palace guard. Then Judge Balkus arrived, disheveled in his night clothes. He had been awoken from his sleep and told that Myst had come for his prisoner. That was something he could never allow.
What is the meaning of this?
He demanded of Myst.
Kelvera, why are you here?
Balkus asked angrily.
I am taking the prisoner into my custody. Look, she was plotting her escape.
Myst insisted.
You will do no such thing,
Balkus yelled.
I have yet to reach my verdict.
Oh, my sentence. The accused will remain here, as I ordered.
The judge insisted.
I am making an executive order. As governor, I will take her into the safety of my own personal custody until your sentence is read.
Myst tried to talk over Balkus, who was having none of it.
No, you will not. You will await my ruling.
The old crusty judge said powerfully. Myst wanted to fight, but he realized he was outnumbered. He had only a few trusted men with him. His cavalry and Sloane's rangers were not there. The court flexed the independence of its power. The armored court sergeants were proud of their own political weight within the city. They were prepared to fight to the death to defend it. Either way, Myst did not want to be party to a bloodbath in the cell chamber, so he withdrew from Balkus, stepping closer to my cell door. I stood opposite the steel bars of the jail cell, observing this comical scene with great amusement. Myst looked over to me with disgust and saw me smile. In a sudden, violent move, he attempted to reach through the bars and grab at me. Despite all of the weight of the many dark stones upon me, I evaded his grasp easily. This then culminated in a pushing match between Myst's men and the court sergeants. The angry human men pushed and shoved each other, yelling and screaming until Myst's entourage was finally removed completely from the South Tower. Myst was then forced to retreat to his palace. Balkus then settled himself with a few deep breaths. He looked over to me and my two young, dedicated legal aides with a sense of satisfaction that the law had prevailed today. He then had his men escort him home. The court guard remained on high alert. No one was permitted in or out of the South Tower until Balkus' ruling next week.
Well, it appears we'll be here for a while,
said Marcek. I took a deep breath as I considered this fact. I was impressed by their dedication, but truly saddened by all they had to endure on my account.
This is a very small space, quite cramped. I'm afraid I can't offer you any comforts of home,
I told them.
We've endured more than 2 weeks on a cell floor before, Miss Aermine.
Sherman assured me.
We'll be fine. We're not leaving you.
After all the drama subsided, Melik arranged for extra portions of food rations be delivered to my cell to feed the boys. He was grateful we were all willing to play along with his lie. Now it seemed even he, my own jailer, needed us.
Miss Aermine. Seeing as we have some time together again, we thought it important to better understand some of the events that led up to the Starfall. That is, there is very little information, practically none, really, on the new Triumvirate. We know almost nothing about them, who they were, and where they came from. Perhaps it is time for you to share their story with us.
Marcek offered. I obliged him, as the last thing I wanted to do was debate a change in my guilty plea. They were right. Just like with the giant killers, the only stories ever told about the new Triumvirate were mostly false. It was time for me to honor their lives with the truth. The boys didn't have any ink or things to write on, but they assured me they could commit the story to memory if I would just agree to tell it. So I did. Once again, I told them the truth. The story of how people from all over the known world, so different in culture and belief, could be united under the banner of truth and justice. Those things that transcend language and the differences of the races. Over the next week, my cell grew quite stinky, and my sleeping was compromised by the boys' incessant snoring. But over those next 7 days, I told them the story, the whole truth of the new Triumvirate.
Thanks so much for watching, everyone. If you haven't yet, please subscribe and ring the bell for notifications so you never miss an episode. Be sure to smash that like button and comment below. It helps a lot. If you'd like to help me get this book published, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter. And as always, be sure to share this story with all of your friends on your favorite social media.